I'm Susan McGinnis with Clean Skies News. The Marcellus Shale Coalition was formed in 2008 to support development of natural gas from the Marcellus Shale, which underlies Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio, and West Virginia. It works to spread the word about what the vast energy source there can do for the economy, energy security, and for jobs. Katie Klaber is president of the Marcellus Shale Coalition, and she joins us now to talk a little bit more about the group. Katie, thanks for coming in.
Oh, thanks for having me.
First of all, what comprises your membership? This is mostly oil and gas companies and associations?
These are companies who are drilling in the Marcellus Shale. Of the rigs that are operating in Pennsylvania, 96% of them are by members of the Marcellus Shale Coalition.
Okay, actual drillers. We've got Anadarko Petroleum, Marathon Oil is there, Range Resources, where Clean Skies News was visiting them recently, Statoil, XTO Energy,
yep,
all members?
All members, and associate members as well, the companies who are supporting that drilling and who recognize the benefits that can go around to all, if the drillers are successful.
Okay, so everybody here is pro shale, pro drilling for natural gas through shale. I also want to mention Chesapeake Energy because they are a supporter of the American Clean Skies Foundation, which is a funder of Clean Skies News. So, Katie, give us an idea of the potential for the Marcellus Shale as far as an energy source, as for a piece of the energy pie for this country, also as far as a contributor to energy security and a job creator.
Yep. Well, the Marcellus is one of many shale plays that are under development across the North America right now. Happens to be the largest at 95,000 square miles and 500 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. It is the largest, and the jobs picture is already really taking hold. We are looking at about 48,000 jobs that were created in 2009, about 110,000 as a result of the industry in Pennsylvania in 2010.
Is there a way to give us a sense of just how much gas can come out of there, as far as how much electricity could produce for the country?
Well, the 500 trillion cubic feet of recoverable gas, could be used in all sorts of different ways. About 38% of that gas is in electricity generation. The most common, obviously, is home heating, and that's another very large percentage. We're seeing the interest in chemical manufacturers shaving off those additional transportation costs by maybe expanding their operations or locating close to where the byproducts of the gas are locating in Pennsylvania, and then would love to see a growth in the amount of gas being used for the transportation sector.
Right.
And I think that will be a very exciting project for us to work on, in the coming months.
Right. And you have been president here for only about 6 weeks. So
yes.
What is your vision for the coalition going forward?
Well, there's a lot of good work to be done, but coming from a position of a lot of successes that have been done by the coalition before they hired staff. Certainly being a unified voice on some very complex issues and communicating to elected officials and decision makers what is important, to the coalition to allow that growth. The education, you can never do enough of that to help the public and decision makers understand how this gas, can get from 8,000 feet below the surface, how to do it safely, how to, look at environmental best practices, and that's really an area where we're also focusing. Is what are the best practices to develop this safely with modernized standards, modernized legislative structure.
Yeah. The environmental issues really are heating up right now, I guess, as the drilling increases. Just wondering how your group deals with a lot of these, the air and water quality issues that are the major concerns surrounding getting gas from shale.
Right. Well, water quality, I think we've had a lot of progress by understanding more how to recycle the frack water. And when you are on a growth curve and drilling more wells, there are great opportunities to recycle, reuse, and we're at many companies at 100% overall, probably upwards of 60% of the water being recycled, and that that's good for everyone. It's good for the bottom line of the drillers. It avoids a lot of additional costs and certainly isn't protective of the environment. I think we've got a great track record with DEP, rolling up our sleeves, working on the issues together. There are some well casing standards, for example, that we've updated. We're helped DEP update. Those are under comment right now, and I think that's just one example of how to modernize the codes that are on the books, not new regulations, but making what's on the books now really reflect this horizontal drilling.
Water seems to be the main issue now for a lot of critics and environmentalists, drillers having to cope with disposing of the tainted water, and we are hearing that there's an apparent shortage of treatment facilities to handle that water. Is this an ongoing problem, or is this something that is a problem for the industry issue going forward when it comes to getting drilling permits?
Right. The treatment capacity has probably been recently less of an urgent issue because of this additional recycling that's going on. However, what's going to be really important, 3, 5, 10 years from now, is that there are options, many safe options for how to dispose of the residual water that's much less than what was originally anticipated.
Now, is it a different issue to the capacity to remove the toxic chemicals from the water? There seems to be another big complaint.
I mean, it's all one and the same.
That's
so,
the same thing.
One of the options is to send the flowback water that can't be recycled to a centralized water treatment plant or to a municipal authority.
Okay.
Taking those metals out and getting that water so that it can be returned to the waterways.
And when you say that, is that what you mean? Is that what they mean when they say a closed loop system to reuse the water? Is that a solution to this problem?
That's absolutely one of the options. I think some of the closed loop systems are still, the costs are pretty high. Trying to look at ways to innovate and bring those down, and if we have as much success on that front as we have on the recycling, we'll be in a great place.
Right. So we are hearing from the critics that the drilling process can contaminate groundwater, even if it's heavily diluted, and we're hearing about concerns about chemicals like benzene, arsenic, and low-level radioactive matter. Some residents even complaining of that tank trucks just dumping wastewater right onto roads.
Well, first of all, I know of no tank trucks being dumped onto roads, and if they're certainly not a member of the Marcellus Shale Coalition. But the issue of groundwater contamination from fracking fluid has been probably the single most misinterpreted issue that's out there right now. When you are drilling a well 18 or 8,000 feet deep and you're casing it with 3 levels of steel and cement, the EPA, state agencies, including the DEP, have documented that there is no connection between groundwater contamination and the natural gas and fracking fluid coming from the subsurface. So I think that that's one of the major areas that the industry has to continue to educate, the connection between that 8,000 feet and the well casings that are well below the groundwater table. Those two just don't connect.
What's your position on the FRAC Act that would have, I guess it's moving through the House and the Senate now in a committee status right now, that would have the companies having to disclose the chemicals and possibly increased EPA regulation?
Well, the issue of disclosure, I think, is hugely important. I don't think we need a new federal regulation to do that. Right now, OSHA requires that every company have material safety data sheets kept on site. That is something that our members and our coalition absolutely support, that disclosure. There's
They disclose all chemicals used in the
absolutely,
in the
and that's done right now. There's no secrets. You hear a lot about the secrets. DEP has the components on their website. You go to any of these sites and an inspector come out, ask for the material safety data sheets, just like any industrial process, and those that information is available to the inspectors or otherwise.
What's the status of something that's called forced pooling, which is compelling landowners who don't want to give up their mineral rights to have to do it?
Well, most states that have developed shale plays have done some kind of a fair pooling standard where you're making sure that if there is a minority landowner in a large tract of land to be drilled, that the landowners who want to drill are able to do that, and most importantly, that every landowner under which the gas would be drawn, that every landowner is compensated fairly for the gas that's underlaying their property.
So give us a view, Katie, of the Marcellus Shale. Look into your crystal ball there for the future. I mean, I guess a lot of the amount of drilling depends on the price of natural gas at any given time, but there's talk that there's a Penn State study about Pennsylvania becoming a net exporter of natural gas by 2014.
Yeah, if we do the job right, working together with elected officials, regulators, and make sure that this is done in a safe, planful way, I think we can get there at that natural gas export level by 2014.
I guess the Exxon XTO deal is one big vote of confidence for that. Do you expect more such deals to be happening?
There's a lot of capital coming in, and the real challenge is making sure that the returns come out of that.
All right, well, we will certainly be watching. Katie Klaber of the Marcellus Shale Coalition, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm Susan McGinnis with Clean Skies News.